Well, good morning. I'm delighted to be here. What I would like to do is just review with you briefly what has taken place in the New Hampshire economy. And the first slide, if you look at that, the heading is, it's all about jobs. Now, if you listened to the news last night, you heard that another 50,000 people were going to be laid off. And this has nothing to do with unemployment, what I'm talking about here. It's mostly what employment. And the reason I brought this slide with me is to just give you an assessment of New Hampshire. And also, like one of the other speakers said previously, New Hampshire doesn't really fit the general or the national norm as much. We're much stronger in certain areas. If you look at 90 and 91, where we lost between 20 and 25,000 jobs, we already went through, at that time period, we had a housing market crisis, we had a financial crisis where the banks were consolidating. So we already went through to one of those series of economic events which are now taking place on the national front. If you look then further on from 93 through 2000, you see that the average growth in jobs was about 17,000 jobs. Now this is total jobs, this is manufacturing and non-manufacturing. Then some of them you might not be aware of it, 91 and 202 and 203, we had a downtick, and that was manufacturing. We lost 12,000 jobs in 92, and we lost another 5,000 in 93. And then you see the next 5 years with moderate growth, and then you see a downtick for 2009. Now, when you look at this from that perspective, it really doesn't jive with what's going on in the national economy today. And the reason for that is that we're just a little more stronger, and we have learned our lesson in the 90s, and we're going forward with a much more cautious approach in terms of our financial situation and also our real estate. And the other thing, too, if you go back to the 93 through 2000 period, those jobs total were 17,000 versus about 8,000 for the later years. And the difference between the two is really technology. Technology has really made productivity go up, and employers now can do more with existing workers instead of hiring a lot of workers. So what have multitasking has to be taking place, and that helps now in the situation we're in terms of employers will think twice before they will try to keep employees. So the layoffs they will have to go through are only going to be done on a very selective basis. They're going to try to keep as much as possible of their workers for the simple reason that they think they have invested a lot of money in their help, and they want to keep them. So when I'm talking about 5,000 jobs being lost in 2009, that's really based on the projections which were done in November of last year. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to change the numbers again when the new benchmarks come out. And I think we're going to be close to about the $14,000 to $15,000 range, 15,000 employee range, I should say, if things prevail as they are today. And I think we're still having problems, basically, in two areas. Credit availability is still tough. The banks are loosening up a little bit, but it's still very tight. And what also doesn't help the situation is the creditworthiness is deteriorating because of all these layoffs. If you had a bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy in the last 5 years, you're trying to get a loan, you're just about to forget it, because nobody's going to lend you any money. And for businesses, it's the same situation. The tight situation with the credit really choking off a lot of expansion. A lot of people want to buy something, people want to build something, but they just cannot get the credit. Now, I have one more slide here to show you what the national picture looks like. And it's again about all the jobs, about jobs. Now, this particular slide you won't see anywhere else, because this slide really is a summation of all the 51 economies taken together in a lump in one number, so that we can see you had the same pattern in the early years, 93 through 2000, which very strong growth, and the average was over about 3 million jobs added. Then you had the downtick in 91, 92, 93, which was, those numbers represent 3 million manufacturing jobs lost in that period. And as you see, New Hampshire had about 12 and 5,000 to go with it. Then you see the growth period again for the next 4 years, and you see a beginning of a downturn in 2008, and you also see another 1 million jobs lost in 2009. Again, that number will be revised down upward, and I think it's going to be close to 2 million, maybe 2.5 million on the national level. The interesting part about it, the technology impact is still taking place on the national economy just as well as it does in the state of New Hampshire. So when you really look at this picture of all the jobs, it is on the national picture is much more, I would say, deteriorating than the New Hampshire picture is. And I think with New Hampshire, we're going to be generally all right. Again, the problem you have to separate out is what you hear on the news and what goes on in New Hampshire. And I think the other previous speakers, I think, emphasized the same point, that we learned our lesson back in the 90s, and I think we're going forward much more cautiously, but I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as people are painting us to be. That, like I said, I think we're going to be losing maybe about 12 to 13,000 jobs in 2009. Thank you very much.